As many of CarAdvice readers probably know, at CarAdvice we think buying cars is a really important part of our brand, because putting our own money on the table and acquiring a car gives us a real world view of how that car is going to stack up over the long term. So I'm here today to introduce you to our brand new M140i, which we've taken delivery of 3 days. It's still in fact got the little pre-delivery stickers on the window. And I've also got a very special guest with me, which is Joe Achilles from the UK. Welcome, Joe.
Cheers, nice to meet you, Beech.
Probably happy to get out of a rainy UK winter.
Absolutely, yeah. Got my sleeves rolled up for a bit of extra tannage.
Yeah, you've got the UK tan, I see.
Yeah.
To a beautiful day in Sydney. There's a reason I've got Joe here with me, because as a few of us at CarAdvice started looking at buying a 140, we did what a lot of you guys do, which is consume a fair amount of content in looking at what type of car we wanted and how we wanted to specify it. And I came across Joe's excellent YouTube channel where he's got quite a lot of content. You've owned a few M-Lights, Joe?
Just one or two, or three. Three and an M2 in the past 4 or so years, yeah.
Right.
So I'm slightly obsessed with them.
That's pretty good.
Yeah.
Joe's got some great footage, taking his cars to the Nürburgring, doing some low-level modifications, specifying his new 140, which, as you guys will hear, is remarkably similar to ours. So I thought rather than listening to me talk about the car, we'd have a genuine guest expert talk about it. And Joe is going to take this car for a drive. Rightio, so here we are on our brand spanking new M140 with 107 Ks on the clock. Joe's made me drive first, which is probably fitting considering he's our imported expert. So look, it's great. I mean, it's still feeling pretty tight, and you know, with 107 Ks on the clock, we're in low-level sport mode, and I guess we are going to give this a bit of a gentle run-in because we're going to be owning it for probably 2 years.
Sure.
I suppose it's exactly the same as all the ones you've had before.
It is, yeah. I'm not used to sitting in the passenger seat, so it's actually a nice change, and it feels very familiar. But we're in Australia and on Australian roads, so it's slightly bizarre.
Well, I think we're at a little bit back bit of Sydney. It's probably not a bad time to pop it into manual and see how it goes. One of the things we bought is the ZF 8-speed on this car.
Yep.
When we were looking at how to specify it, we considered the manual, and then we drove one.
Yep.
It's probably not. What do you think of the manual?
Well,
you've had one.
I have, yeah. So my first M135 was actually an auto, ZF 8-speed like this, and loved it. But I thought I'd change it up a bit when it came to 2 years down the track. So I got a manual just for that reason. Wasn't very impressed with it, and there's certain times, certain roads, it's great, but the majority of the time, this gearbox is just...
It's unbelievable. I mean, I'm in manual now, and these paddles, the sort of the heft on them is pretty good.
Yep.
I wish they were real metal, but apart from that, they are. Are they illuminated at night?
They're not. No.
Oh.
No.
And I did notice on some of your videos when we were specifying the car. What do you think about the new indicator stalk?
Well, it's funny, isn't it? Little details like that, especially as a long-term owner like myself. I don't know. I don't like the way they feel. I think they feel a bit cheaper. It's also hard for the little push, the three clicker for changing lanes. It's hard to engage that and not to engage the full shift. But yeah, I'm not used to them yet.
It's for those that don't know, BMW had a non-detente indicator, so it didn't stay down, and that you pressed to it down, and it's recentered itself, and then it would stay on. And they've now gone to a more conventional. I think they were the only manufacturer that used to do it that way.
They were, yeah.
It's been a long-standing BMW thing, and they've now changed it. I presume, is that changing across all the models?
Yeah, so I think it's in line with like all the new 5s and the 7s and the new X3 and stuff. So it's just one of those things that you get used to, but just one of those little details that you notice as a BMW owner.
One thing I noticed driving it, Joe, and when I was watching some of your videos, the backlit analog display, it's really good. I mean, we're on a sort of quite glary, overcast day.
Yep.
It looks digital, but with really good resolution, but it's not.
Exactly, yeah. Somehow they've managed to... When I first found out that it wasn't a full digital display, I thought, it's going to be a bit of a half-assed attempt. But actually, as you say, it looks great. It's clear, and I'm an analog person. I really love analog dials.
Same. Look, I love the integration of their TFT in it. I think this is better than it's ever before because, on some of the early BMWs, it used to stand out.
Yeah, it was like analog, digital box.
Yeah.
But that blends in. It's it's really nice.
And the only thing I don't love about this is that the pointers are white, as is the numerals during the day.
Yes.
And the pointers turn orange at night, and I wish they were orange the whole time.
Yeah, that's definitely something I agree in, and I didn't actually realise until we went out on this the other night and you showed me. It's so fast.
I have to say, this engine is, it's just, what was a review I was reading described the M140 as a life support system for an engine, which I think's a bit cruel.
Right.
I think the car, and I think the steering feel, it's interesting. It's certainly not BMW's worse. I actually think it's pretty good. It's not great on middle.
Yep.
On centre, it's a little numb.
Yes.
I mean, you've done a lot more Ks than I have in them. Is that how you feel?
Yeah, I think my biggest issue with a lot of modern BMW steering setups, including M-Lights, is the fact that once you go into Sport or Sport Plus, the steering becomes, to me anyway, overly heavy.
Does it get heavier in Sport Plus? Does it change between Sport and Sport Plus?
I think it stays the same, but what I meant was, as soon as you come out of comfort, you get a really heavy steering.
But listen, since we brought you all the way over from the UK as the resident expert, probably why don't we have you drive?
Okay. Sure? Wait, you said you've seen my videos. You sure you want to get me behind the wheel? I
never made it to the interview videos. So let's hand over to Joe and see what happens.
Perfect.
So, Joe,
yes.
I mean, you travelled, what is it, 16,000 Ks to drive basically the same car that you've just bought yourself.
Yeah.
So look, for CarAdvice readers, look, Joe, as I said, we came across him when we were viewing. He's a professional driver in his day job, and he's been had a couple of M-Lights, and really is waxed lyrical. And it's a pretty big move for somebody to go from an M2, which is probably one of the greatest M cars that's been put out in the last 20 years.
For sure.
Back to a 140.
Yeah.
So I guess, what was you thinking?
As a daily, now I've got my work car, but as an absolute overall package, I really strongly believe that the 140 is almost a better car than the M2. It's got a more pliant ride, and providing, well, in the UK it's an option, adaptive suspension, and I go on about it all the time. It's
weird that you mention that, because obviously, look, we love the M2 at CarAdvice.
Yep.
I found personally that the way the suspension setup, which is basically they've bolted the rear wishbone directly onto the subframe.
Yes.
I don't think it's even got bushers.
No.
And it gives it that unbelievable connection on track, but it can wear you pretty heavily on the road.
It can, yes. Unless you're a 20-year-old. Which
Yeah.
Most of us aren't.
I am not a 20-year-old.
You sure?
No. I've got the mind of a 20-year-old, but. But yeah, and we had the same view. Whereas, of course, and is it right that in the UK the options list, I mean, is totally different to Australia? I mean,
totally
adaptive is, for example, optional.
Yes. Everything is. Yeah.
So, and of course, in Australia we're incredibly lucky. I think there's only 3 to 5 options. I think the sunroof was optional on this car.
Yep.
I think the Apple CarPlay was optional.
Okay.
Did you specify CarPlay on yours?
I didn't. Yep. No, but I can get that coded at a later time. That's another story.
Yeah. Look, we did, because even though I think the iDrive 6 is a great system,
yep.
I think, look, Spotify with CarPlay is great.
Sure.
Because you get the full functionality of Spotify. So I think if you're a music lover,
yes,
I reckon it's almost worth the $400, $500 that odd it is here.
Yep.
And the other thing that's unusual is it's one of the only wireless CarPlays we know of. So, because I can't stand CarPlay when you've got to plug in.
Yes, no, I totally agree.
Thinking about your experience with your previous manual, and then you specified a ZF 8-speed in your new one as well.
Yep.
Clearly you're not a lazy driver, so that wasn't around your left leg workouts.
It wasn't. It was, the manual was very notchy.
Yep.
My one that I've just traded in had done 16,000 miles, so about 25,000 Ks,
Yep.
and it got better during that time.
Did you have the standard stick or the M Performance
No,
stick?
standard stick, yep.
Have you heard that a few were saying that it's a bit better with a shorter throw stick?
Yes, I'd heard that, but I can't understand how that's going to eliminate the not, it's not changing the gearbox. So, and the other thing with it, and this is quite important to me, and again, a lot of people go, oh, MPG, or as you call it, what's your miles per gallon?
Kilometres per 100 litres per 100 kilometres.
Exactly, and the ZF, it honestly gives you 15 to 20% more efficiency. The eighth gear is
two extra ratios.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And six, when you're used to that, and then you have a 6-speed manual, the 6 on the highway is just is humming away too high.
Yeah.
For me.
Well, that's the other thing is that with all that 500 newton metres of torque, you might as well have 8 ratios because you can cruise in 8th.
Yeah.
What else are you going to do with it?
We're going to 8th now, so we're crawling up this hill here at 1,000 revs.
And we're doing 50 Ks
50 Ks now, and I put my foot down and you can feel it pulling. 8th gear.
It's ridiculous.
8th gear.
My motorbike would stall.
Yes, well, most cars would stall at that. Even high performance, naturally aspirated cars, you just could not do that. It's amazing.
How do you find the seats in these cars?
I find them really good, actually, and I'm
Joe's a pretty tall guy. He's 6'4".
Exactly, yeah, and so that's always an issue. Well, not always an issue, but it's always something I have to look out for. Probably like yourself, you're 6 foot, 6'1"?
Oh, 6'1" on a good day.
Yeah.
I'm not hunching.
Yeah. No, I think the seats themselves are really good. They're really supportive. They're comfortable. They're good on long journeys, and they fit. Although maybe someone of your size is a perfect fit, for me, I don't feel like I'm too big and I'm sitting on them, which is the case with, say, the new Audi RS seats and stuff. As good as they look, I feel like I'm just way too big for the seat.
I agree, and I don't know if it was one of your videos, but I find the bolsters right for dailies.
Yes.
So it's got enough bolstering, but you're not climbing over the bolsters.
Which exactly.
They tend to take a fair beating over a time.
Yes, yep.
And the other thing, I find that the way that the squabs, they've got a good degree of adjustment. You can just actually keep heading up here for a while,
sure.
Joe.
Yeah, no.
But I find the squab, the way that they the side bolsters, they hold me just tight enough.
Yep.
But also let me relax for those days when you're just commuting in traffic.
Exactly, and that's so important. It's a very hard mix to get right, I think, with a lot of seats.
Look, for CarAdvice viewers, we'll show you some detailed shots of the interior, but we specified this same as Joe's as a mineral grey exterior.
Yep.
With the black rims. We went the Estral blue interior trim with the matching blue seat trim. Mainly to give what is a reasonably austere
German, yeah,
very German. Austere cabin, a bit of a lift.
Yeah.
God, that exhaust note.
And this is a stock exhaust, by the way.
It is a stock, yeah.
And it hasn't been, it's brand new, the car, so it hasn't been, they get better with age, don't they, exhaust?
They do. I mean, we found all of exhausts on cars we have, especially those that have performance exhaust age. My Macan was, after sort of 4,000 or 5,000, had changed, and I don't understand how that occurs, but they do.
Yeah, just naturally build up and feel better. It's a great bit of road, isn't it? But this to me is M-like territory.
It is, isn't it? Which it is. I mean, we're heading, we're sort of north of Sydney guys, and it's one of those bits where you can, you really get that suppleness of the suspension. It just works for these sort of pretty average Australian roads.
Yeah.
What in terms of options? So with an M140 in the UK, everything is optional, I presume. Adaptive headlights, optional.
Oh, yep, absolutely. So you do get some standard equipment, like you get full leather, you get the LEDs, but I think that's throughout the 1 Series range now. What else do you get? Climate control, but that is pretty much it. You don't even get things like cruise control. You get the speed limit control. In fact, this has got the cruise. So yeah, it's very stripped out. So even things like the Pro Nav that's in this, you have to pay an extra £900 odd, which is about $1,600.
I would imagine this would look dire with a smaller screen.
Yes, although nowadays you still get the full glass, but it's a smaller panel behind it, if that makes sense. Whereas before, the early cars used to just be this tiny bit of plastic, and it looked absolutely terrible.
Yeah, it's again, when we look at this car, we're a bit of a fan of the way that BMW integrates. While it does look a bit like a a billboard stuck on. It's sort of just the right height for driving. You're not on some navs that integrate a bit more into the dash. The problem is you are looking down more into them.
Yes. Yep.
So while the initial impression might be slightly stuck on, the reality is in terms of usability, I think they actually work pretty well.
They do. They really do. They're the perfect eye level. I'm not making you feel seasick, am I?
No, in fact, I don't get seasick. It's a testimony to your driving, Joe, because there's only I'm comfortable with Al Bors and yourself.
Yeah. I'm just having a lot of fun.
And Al Bors is a pretty sharp steerer.
Yeah, no, I watch most of your stuff, and he's brilliant. I love watching Al Bors.
But yeah, it's so, and you've obviously had a fair bit more experience than we have with the iDrive 6. We've been seeing it coming through the garage and the new LCIs across the range.
Yes, yep.
Touchscreen.
Yep, big step on. Useful some of the time.
Yep. Not useful when you're going around these twisties.
No. In fact, that's a whole different video, isn't it? Have you input?
Have you tried to use the Lexus?
No.
Lexus has a little touchpad, which we obviously think Lexus do some great things, but that touchpad is not one of them.
Right.
Anybody that thought that a touchpad in a moving object would be a good idea. So yeah, I actually having a car that's got both rotary inputs as well as touchscreen. I find I love touchscreen when I'm parked.
Sure.
And I love it as a passenger. Here's probably not a bad spot, but I obviously I still love this the fat control. I noticed on the LCIs they've gone to the large rather than the poverty pack smaller ones.
Yes. Yep.
Are you finding as a regular owner you've been using the rideable touch bit?
To be honest, no. Yeah. I think it's a bit not a gimmick. It's something. I'm sure some people use it, but I don't. Yep. Again, it comes down to if you're on the move, it's impossible to use because it's but it's I guess it's handy. Some people might use it.
I find it's bad because my handwriting's that of a doctor.
Yes, my handwriting's tragic as well. So.
In fact, for CarAdvice viewers, when we were getting in the car and we were setting the destination, Joe wisely told me that the voice control is excellent. And look, to be honest with you, we've had some really good experience with BMW. The irony is that it didn't understand my input and did understand Joe's English accent.
From standing outside of the car, but I wasn't even in the car.
So either I've got a speech impediment, or the Germans are far more sympathetic to English accents than they are to Australian ones.
Yeah.
Pity the poor New Zealanders that buy M140i.
Oh, they got no chance.
Yeah.
Nick Murray.
Yeah.
Again. No chance, mate. No chance.
How have you found yours have stood the test of time in terms of squeaks, rattles, reliability?
I've had no major issues. In fact, I've had pretty much no issues. I did have a leak in the car at one point, but that was only because the windscreen was replaced by someone totally different.
Right, so it wasn't
done properly, and there was ingress. But otherwise, aside from that, I have heard there's some issues which this one clearly doesn't have. There's some seal noise issues in the 5-door cars. Yep. And I've heard that myself, so I can say that is a problem, but otherwise the paints, they had some paint issues on the LCI cars, the LCI 1 cars, around 2015.
Do you think it was all colours, or was I reading it was just the whites?
Well, I did a sort of survey on my Instagram and got people to send through pictures and complaints, and I'd say 90% of them were whites. There was
Maybe it's only because when the white peels off, you can see the colour underneath.
Yeah, exactly.
When the grey and black peels off, it's fine.
No one's actually noticed that on theirs. The paint quality, I think, though, in general, around the front end of the cars, not the best. It's a bit of a thin paint, but again, going back to as a package, what this is worth is, I think, there's nothing really to complain about. Look,
this car will spend a bit of time between both our Melbourne, Sydney and Brisbane CarAdvice offices. In our Melbourne office, we actually have a paint gauge penetrometer.
Okay.
So we'll run it up and see what we think.
Sure.
And we'll do our normal cabin noise tissue. Although I have to say, we're on reasonable course chip here, and I'm really surprised at how quiet the cabin is.
Yeah.
The tyre, I was expecting a bit more tyre roll.
Yeah, well, another little geeky detail, and I've had two. My first car was a 5-door like this one. Then I went to the 3-door.
Yep.
Now the 3-door is louder inside.
Yeah, we of course don't get the 3-door in Australia.
Oh, okay. So it's not relevant
so it
to you.
doesn't. It's not, no, but it's not. Yeah, but I was watching some of your videos, and the two things that annoy me is the seat height for the rails.
Yes, yeah.
That would really quite annoy me.
Yep.
And two, look, I don't agree with some of our British counterparts that think the 3-door is more attractive.
Yes.
I think the 3-door has quite a slab-sided view at 3/4, and I think the way the 5-door cuts in around the rear wheel arches, I think adds a sort of a dimension to it.
Absolute, 100% agree. Yeah.
And look, I have to ask you, even though looks are subjective, we've got a bit of a running debate as we're waiting for this car in the last three or 4 months in the CarAdvice office.
Yeah.
Between is the M140i look up?
Yeah, no, I think the looks are subjective,
Yep.
but I love them. I think they're great. And also, I'm a hatchback. I buy this car. I don't buy cars so much on how they look. I buy cars on what they do for me and what they fulfill. And I do a lot of mountain biking.
Yep.
You guys, surfers, whatever. You've got the hatchback, or even, it's a mini family car in the back. Really, you've got the doors.
It's funny you should mention that, because the first thing I have to say, when you're sitting inside it, I'm not looking at the outside.
Yep.
And inside it, it's contemporary LCI Series 2 BMWs. By that I mean I think it looks great.
Yeah.
Actually, I'm a bit of a traditionalist, and I like the way that BMW materials age.
Yep.
I think they've done a lot on the LC2. I think probably more than came through in some of the launch reviews. I think the faux stitching, it is faux, it's not real, or is it real? Actually, if it looks real.
I think it is real. It's definitely not hand stitched, but I think it's definitely real.
It's not a Camry where they actually do this little rubber thing. It's actually is real.
Yeah.
They've done real stitching across the dash that
Yep.
I think adds to it. I think the way they've integrated the centre stack is great, and still angles towards the driver, classic BMW.
Yep.
And I think, which is what I think Paul Marriott covered it for us at launch. It was one of the things that BMW were at pains to comment on, and I think they were right, that they really that is a mountain biker.
Yeah.
They really did improve the fit and finish of the interior.
They did, yeah. And anyone that jumps in one now, and people that I know, owners that have got them, really do go on and rave about how much nicer it is. And first glance, it was like, okay, they've just sort of, played around with a few bits. But it actually, when you get, it's one of those things that when you get back in the old one,
Yep.
you go,
really
actually,
notice
it's a
it.
bit nasty, the old one.
Yeah, I was surprised, because we'd ordered this without, I hadn't sat in the LCI2,
Yep.
And then I saw the LCI2, and I thought that it had been slightly underrepresented in how the changes were. I think they in various reviews described as sort of mild, but I actually think that was a quite a good evolution.
Definitely.
The other big one, is of course Digital Speedo, which is, revolutionary in 2018 for BMW.
Well, it is, yeah, especially when you think Audi did it in the 1990s.
Yeah.
But no, but it's a great. I love it. I think it looks, as we touched upon earlier on, I think it just looks perfect. It's a good compromise between digital, but there's enough analog on there to make me feel happy.
Yep. So 1 foot in the past, one in the future.
Yeah, it pretty much is. Yeah, this is like the envelope.
So look, first of all, Joe, thanks heaps for coming out and helping us with a whole bunch of content over the last couple of weeks.
Yep.
The second bit is for the future updates of this car, which we'll probably own for about 2 years, we're going to be throwing to Joe in the UK, who's got a car that's nearly identically specified.
Very similar, yeah.
I don't think there's too
No, yeah, spec-wise same. It's mineral grey, but I've just got an Oyster interior.
Oyster?
Oyster,
Right,
yeah.
sophisticated.
Well, yeah, just to lift. The thing is, I'm from the UK.
You're going to wear white linen slacks?
Well, we don't get as much sunshine. We get a lot of gloomy weather, so anything to sort of lift the interior, as you said, with the blue trim in here, so I've gone for Oyster this time, and but
so we're going to have 40 CarAdvice people driving this, and my worst nightmare will be an Oyster interior
with one blue seat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So look, our plan is to, over the next 12 months, throw to how Joe's tracking with his 140.
Yep.
And sort of draw a few comparisons so that we can give everybody a bit of an accelerated view of how we think probably this punchy last of its breed rear-wheel drive straight six car. Everybody knows the new series will be front-wheel drive architecture, and I suppose all drive architecture in some markets. And I think for car enthusiasts, that's going to be a bit of a loss. Which is one of the reasons we bought this car, and that's probably one of the reasons you bought yours.
It is, yeah. I might potentially own that for a long time, that car this time.
I think there's a few of us at CarAdvice that are probably thinking that as long as Al Bors hasn't driven this one too much, we might buy it. But, and look, for our readers as well, as usual, we've been running on the podcast that each month that you've got the opportunity to drive our cars, and this will be in the reader fleet in the next month or two.
Awesome.
So thanks heaps, Joe.
Mate, no worries. Thank you very much for inviting me out here. Yeah, it's been brilliant.